So the last part of translation, we have seen translation or protein synthesis in prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Now the protein which is synthesized or the polypeptide chain which is synthesized as most of the time not active, they need to be folded into the native form. So folding is necessary. Sometimes the proteins are synthesized like a larger one which will require proteolytic action or cleavage of a certain segment of the polypeptide chain to make it active. Okay, like your zymogens, the enzymes, certain enzymes are not formed, or the synthesized ones are not active there, like trypsinogen. It has to be converted to the active form trypsin, which happens by cutting off a part of the polypeptide chain. So it requires some changes or processing of the protein, which is known as post-translational modification. So now let's look at what are these translational modification with few examples. Okay, so coding region from the DNA, we have transcription, which gives us mRNA, and the information is translated into protein. Okay, now the protein which is formed, which is known as nascent protein or precursor protein, need to undergo certain processing, which is going to convert it into a mature protein or active protein. Rather not active, because one more process is required, that is folding. Folding of this polypeptide chain into its native form, which involves the secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures for certain protein, that is going to give you the biologically active protein. Okay, so let's look into these post-translational modification. Okay, so these are changes which takes place in the polypeptides after the initiation of their synthesis. So once synthesis is done, certain changes, very minute changes occurs during the synthesis, but most of them, they occur after the protein synthesis is completed. And these modifications include trimming or cutting apart by proteolytic degradation, intine splicing. As we had intron splicing, we have intine splicing, which is again the region which doesn't is not the active part, or which is not required in the active protein structure. There could be some covalent groups added or removed, okay, like phosphorylation, addition of phosphate linkage, etc., which, and all of these are collectively known as post-translational modification. So this diagram you can see here, one is folding of the polypeptide to its tertiary structure. If it's a mixture of, or it's a combination of polypeptide chain, you will have quaternary structure also, for example, hemoglobin. Then you can have proteolytic cleavage, which is going to remove a piece of the polypeptide and convert it into an active form. Then you can have an intine splicing, where a particular segment in between could be removed. Okay, and you can have chemical modification, which is covalent modification, that is addition of a group or removal of a group, etc. Okay. Post-translational modification is important because it changes the charge, the conformation, and the size of the protein molecule. It makes the protein more stable. Okay, and more importantly, it converts the proteins into an active form. Most proteins are synthesized in cytoplasm. Okay, you have certain proteins also synthesized in mitochondria and chloroplast, but most of them are synthesized in cytoplasm, and then they are transported to other cellular region. As I told you, post Translation modification are important for the stability of protein, biochemical activity, protein targeting, certain for localizing the protein it is also necessary, and for protein signaling, protein-protein interaction or cascade amplification, which you must have seen in certain enzymes. Okay, so for that also post-translational modification is important. The first one for all protein folding, although some reference book or some sources will also say that protein folding may not come under per se the post modificational protein. This will happen for all the protein. Okay, so post translation modification, they say that all the remaining thing, apart from protein folding, the remaining part is considered as post translational modification. But yes, folding do occur after the protein synthesis. So I've just included here. So protein folding again is very important to convert it into an active form. The first action after protein synthesis most of the time is folding of the polypeptide chain into native conformation. Okay, so it begins with the secondary structure. So all these you must have done in the structure of protein. So beta sheets and alpha helix. So first is formation of that to form the nucleus or seed, and then the remainder of the protein chain continues to fold and twist. Okay, and to give the 3D arrangement, and finally you will have covalent linkages between the disulfide bonds or these cysteine linkages forming disulfide bonds. Finally, the tertiary structure is formed. Now, the folding of the proteins are done or is actually assisted by a protein known as chaperones. So these are the proteins which is going to catalyze or help in folding of protein. Okay, and many of these chaperones act as an enzyme which couple ATP hydrolysis to protein folding process. Most of the interaction are non-covalent, but yes, the tertiary structure do involve covalent disulfide linkages. So disulfide bond formed will lock the protein into its final form after other stabilizing non-covalent interaction are in place. Okay, so for biological modification, biological activity, folding is important, but proteins which require biological modification like splicing or removal of a segment, addition of a group, that will happen before folding. So those protein which requires post-translational modification, those modification will happen and then the protein will be folded. So now let's look at what are these different types of modification. The first one is proteolytic degradation. Many proteins which are synthesized, they are synthesized as a bigger proteins than their actual functional or the active form. Okay, so these bigger proteins need to be cut short into the functional one. So some portion of the precursor molecules are removed by proteolysis to liberate the active protein. Okay, and this process is commonly known as trimming. The best example would be insulin. Look at this diagram where this is the pre-pro insulin, which is actually synthesized by the during the protein synthesis. Okay, so mRNA is responsible for coding the entire pre-pro insulin, this big. Now if you see this white portion at the terminal end, that is removed. Okay, this much part is cleaved from the pre-pro insulin to convert it into pro-insulin, the second structure. And now if you see another, the remaining white portion, this entire intin, the non-active portion, is again removed, and what you have is the active insulin. So for the function of insulin, this much part is necessary. So this is the part which is the structure for active insulin. So that is an example for proteolytic degradation. Another examples are zymogens, that is inactive digestive enzymes like tryptophan. These are also synthesized as a bigger proteins which are trimmed to the active form. Okay. Next, its second modification is again it is included in the insulin example itself. So intin splicing. So your intin is the intervening sequence in certain proteins. They can be comparable to the introns in mRNA. So these intervening sequences are removed and the extins are joined together. So here in case of insulin, the extins are not joined. It's just the removal of intin. So it's a different type of modification, but here in intin splicing you will find that the middle sequence is removed and the extends the extreme segments would be joined also. So that is an example of intin splicing. Okay. Next modification is covalent modification. Here you will find there could be addition or removal of certain groups. Okay, mostly it is formation of a covalent linkage by adding certain groups. The first one is phosphorylation. This you must have encountered in various enzymes activity. Okay, uh, the hydroxy group containing amino acid of protein like serine, threonine, tyrosine are subjected to phosphorylation. Now the phosphorylation may increase or decrease the activity of the protein. Okay, so during regulation in carbohydrate metabolism, you must have done regulation of certain enzymes. Here I've quoted glycogen synthase. So if you've done glycogen synthesis, there's this enzyme which is responsible, that is glycogen synthase. In the phosphorylated form, it is inactive. Okay, and removal of phosphate group makes it active form. So a group of enzyme called protein kinase, okay, and another enzyme protein phosphatase is responsible for adding the phosphate linkage and removal or dephosphorylation. Okay, so many enzymes that undergo phosphorylation or dephosphorylation are known in metabolism, and you must have already done it in carbohydrate metabolism. One such example is glycogen synthase. Next is hydroxylation. During formation of collagen, the amino acid proline and lysine are respectively converted to hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. Okay, so proline a lysine a basic amino acid, and proline, if you remember, the cyclic amino acid. Okay, these two which are present in inactive collagen, they are converted or they are hydroxylated. Okay, converted to hydroxyproline. So the residue, the proline and lysine residue present in collagen is converted to hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. Now this hydroxylation activates the collagen. Now this hydroxylation process occurs in the endoplasmic reticulum, and it requires the help of vitamin C. So vitamin C for this reaction acts as a coenzyme. Next is glycosylation, where a carbohydrate moiety is added to the protein. So you have these glycoproteins. Okay, so some proteins are glycoproteins where you have the addition of carbohydrate. So this is a kind of post-translational modification. So complex carbohydrate moiety is attached to the amino acid serine and threonine by an O-glycosidic linkage, okay, so O-link, or it could be attached to asparagine by an N linkage, okay, which leads to the synthesis of glycoproteins. You also have another example is vitamin K dependent carboxylation of glutamic acid in certain clotting factors. So certain clotting factors, there the glutamic acid residue need to be carboxylated to convert it into active clotting factor. Okay, so those reaction requires vitamin K. So these are the example of certain modification done. Now this slide gives you the amino acid across which certain modification can take place. Okay, so you have amino terminal amino acids where glycosylation, acetylation, etc. can happen, formylation. You have carboxy terminal and where methylation and ADP ribosylation happens. So whatever these the previous slides, how many modification is given, that's you can do these much, and these are the for further information, these are the other modification which also occur. Okay, now coming to the last part, we have seen protein synthesis, we have seen post-translational modification. Now, there are certain chemicals or drugs which can affect protein synthesis, rather inhibit protein synthesis. Okay, so you need to know certain examples and how they inhibit the protein synthesis. So these are the this is the list given. Puromycin. There's a group of antibiotics like tetracyclines. There's the chloramphenicol, cycloheximide. There's another antibiotic, streptomycin. There's a toxic that is diphtheria toxin, etc. So these are certain examples which you need to remember. 1 mark question or in the multiple choice can be asked. Okay, now I'll directly move to the next this slide where the antibiotic or rather the drugs with their mechanism, how they inhibit the protein synthesis is mentioned. Okay, so before you read this, you should know what is the steps involved in protein synthesis. Then you will be able to understand how these drugs inhibit the protein synthesis. So for example, streptomycin and other aminoglycosides, they inhibit initiation. So they are going to inhibit initiation itself and cause misreading of mRNA. This takes place in prokaryotics. So you can use it as a antibacterial or against prokaryotic cells. Tetracycline binds to the 30S subunit and inhibits the binding of amino acyl tRNA. Okay, so it's going to bind to 30S and it inhibits the binding of the incoming amino acyl tRNA. Again, effective against prokaryotic, so can be used as an antibacterial. So similarly, you can just go through these mechanisms. Chloramphenicol again inhibits the peptidyl transferase. So the second step of elongation, if you remember, inhibits the peptidyl transferase activity of 50S ribosomal subunit. Okay, so the protein synthesis will stop there at that point. Again in prokaryotic, so effective against bacterial cell. Now the second one, cycloheximide, is against active against eukaryotic cell also. So similar to chloramphenicol, but against eukaryotic cell. Erythromycin, again, it inhibits translocation, so movement of the ribosome across the mRNA is inhibited against prokaryotes, so you can use it as an antibacterial. Okay, those which are against prokaryotic, you can use it as an antibacterial. Now the puromycin has a structure which is similar to amino acyl tRNA. Okay, so a long structure which is similar to amino acyl tRNA. So what it does is, if you incorporate puromycin, or if you give puromycin, uh, that will be incorporated, that will go and bind to the mRNA in place of amino acid tRNA, okay, mostly the A side, and then there the peptidyl group transfer also takes place, but now this peptide chain remains bound, tightly bound to puromycin. So protein synthesis further will not take place. So that is how inhibition by puromycin happens. So these are few examples of drugs which inhibits protein synthesis. The last slide has the difference between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic translation. The first difference is the difference between the ribosome. Second is, as I told you, the transcription translation takes place simultaneously in prokaryote, but in eukaryotic it is not the same. Prokaryotic cell mRNA is polycistronic, whereas here it is monocistronic. Very important difference. Prokaryotic translation, the first amino acid taking part is formyl methionine, whereas eukaryotic it is methionine. Okay, whereas prokaryotic translation is a faster process. This is a little slower. Now, after translation of protein synthesis, the formyl group attached to the first methionine group is removed. Here, in eukaryotic cell, most of the time, the entire methionine is removed. The first methionine, initiating methionine is removed from the polypeptide chain. And the other differences are difference between the release factor, okay, and then as we discussed, mRNA life in prokaryotic cell is less, but in the case of eukaryotic, it is longer, few hours to few days. Okay, so it's quite stable. So this is a table which gives you the differentiation between translation between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell.